Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues right now. And make sure to join me, Sean Hannity, this afternoon starting at 2, right here on AM 560, The Answer.
Come on, Hannity. Didn't you get enough promotion last night from Donald Trump? We're going to interrupt our show, too? All right. There was a national security discussion as a portion of the 90 minutes. But I got a
small portion, and I didn't learn a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it was a little bit of relitigating the decision to authorize the use of force in Iraq and whether Trump supported it before he opposed it or opposed it before he supported it. And then a lot of discussion about ISIS, a little bit of discussion about the Middle East. There was, though, a discussion of the Iran deal. Hillary Clinton,
Was for it.
looking at the mullahs in Tehran as our new partners in peace and trying to explain why this was such a positive development for the U.S.'s national security.
With respect to Iran, when I became Secretary of State, Iran was weeks away from having enough nuclear material to form a bomb. They had mastered the nuclear fuel cycle under the Bush administration. They had built covert facilities. They had stocked them with centrifuges that were whirling away. And we had sanctioned them. I voted for every sanction against Iran when I was in the Senate, but it wasn't enough. So I spent a year and a half putting together a coalition that included Russia and China to impose the toughest sanctions on Iran. And we did drive them to the negotiating table. And my successor, John Kerry, and President Obama got a deal that put a lid on Iran's nuclear program.
Oh, that's what's happening. I'll tell you what, here's a question. Here would have been perhaps a nice rejoinder for Trump. You know what, if Russia's signing on to the deal that you've forged, do you think maybe it's in Iran's best interest and not ours?
Yeah.
Right? This is the same Russia that you understand to be an enemy of the United States, right? The autocratic Vlad Putin. But he's an ally there to stop Iran, the same Iran that Russia is helping to finance a nuclear reactor in. Boy, there was real opportunity there, and I'm not sure that Trump scored as many points as he could. But for more guidance on the points that could have been scored and should be in the next debate on these topics related to national security and the war against terrorism, we're happy to be joined again by our friend, Dr. Sebastian Gorka. He's the author of the New York Times bestseller, Defeating Jihad, A Winnable War. Dr. Gorka, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Good morning to you.
Good morning. And so what about the back and forth on Iran and Hillary's case that the Iranian deal, I mean, this is, of course, the regime position, the Iranian deal that provides a glide path to a nuclear Iran, in point of fact, according to Hillary Clinton, prevented a nuclear Iran?
It's utterly fallacious. It's bogus. And I don't know why Mr. Trump didn't hit back. If the deal was so good, why do we now find out that there were additional, totally secret parts of it that Congress wasn't even allowed to know about, where Iran said, sorry, we're not going to agree to this limit on uranium, we're not going to agree to this limit on our hot sites, and we're not going to agree to limiting our access to heavy water, all of which are essential for nuclear weapons. If the deal was so good, why did it have to be bust secretly in 3 different places? And secondly, if the deal was so good, why are Iranian patrol boats harassing our naval vessels? Why has Iranian behavior got even more aggressive after the deal was signed? That's what I would have liked to have heard from Mr. Trump.
And why are they provoking us, and when will it stop? Don't you think he could have...
And why do we have to pay ransom to get our hostages back from our partner in peace?
Correct. And why is Iran still considered by the State Department to be one of the primary sponsors of terrorism, state sponsors of terrorism in the world? Just recently, a study came out just, I think, a week ago, which has calculated that in the last 15 years, more than 1,000 U.S. servicemen and women have been killed by Iranian actions in Iraq. So all of this stuff creates huge gaping holes in the argument that the Iran deal is good for U.S. national security, but were kind of missed opportunities for the Republican candidate.
Well, and speaking of Iraq, does it bother you that Trump, there's a lot of vacillation going on? First, he said he supports troops invading Iraq, and then he said, no, he didn't. Does that matter to you?
Again, that was a gotcha thing. I mean, really, we're going to be debating in front of 100 million people what Donald Trump said 13 years ago on the Howard Stern show when he wasn't a politician running for public office, when the other candidate is a person who actually voted for the Iraq war and then was part of the U.S. administration that decided we win by withdrawing our troops in 2011. So it was a performance on both sides, and it was lots of gotcha questions.
Well, and Hillary's less than genuine, at least relative to the truth, answers on these matters. Oh, the withdrawal of troops, that was something George W. Bush negotiated. That's not their fault. It's Bush's fault. She
not true.
Fell back on that. And then, of course, Dr. Gorka, Hillary Clinton has traveled to, I don't know,
112 countries.
I think Diane Sawyer.
I think that means that an airline stewardess is probably more qualified than Hillary.
Exactly. It's all about travel. Yeah. Or 1,000 countries. I think Diane Sawyer thinks there's 1,000 countries in the world. So let's say 1,000 just for hyperbolic effect. And she's negotiated ceasefires, and the world's a safer place because of all the great work that she's done building coalitions. And the response to her contention that those foreign policy chops have made the world a safer place.
As I say again and again and again, wherever you look in the world today, the world is on fire. Russia has invaded a neighbor. Iran is expanding. ISIS is expanding. China is building false atolls in the middle of disputed waters to create new military installations. In Africa, you have Boko Haram. You have in Latin America the drug cartels out of control. This is after 7.5 years of President Obama and Hillary Clinton's foreign policy. So it's the difference between Hollywood like narrative spin and the reality on the ground, which is the world is more. Look, let's just quote President Obama's chief intelligence officer, D.N.I. Clapper, the Director of National Intelligence, who recently stated in Congress, the world is more unstable than I have ever seen in my 30-plus year in intelligence. That's the administration's most senior intelligence officer.
Well, speaking of ISIS, Hillary Clinton referred people to go to her website and her plans to defeat ISIS. What is in her plan to defeat ISIS, and break it down for us?
I can't, because it's all pablum. It's all, she keeps using these phrases like intelligence surge. What does that mean? It means nothing. Again, it's Washington doublespeak. There is no key theme there, and except phrases like "we will not deploy one pair of boots onto the." Well, you've just told the enemy what you won't do, which is exactly what the enemy will exploit. This happened with her husband in the 1990s, who said, "Whatever we do, we're not deploying troops into the Balkans." Well, guess what? Milosevic knew that, and he exploited that. So it's, again, on the one hand, taking the bait from gotcha questions from Mr. Trump, and on the other hand, a woman who was just giving us the same old boilerplate that means absolutely nothing.
I was hoping for an intelligence surge in last night's debate, but I didn't get it. One of the questions that I would have liked explored in this context of national security, there was some talk about external threats, not so much internal threats, the things we're doing to ourselves, immigration policy, and also, especially since Trump gave a detailed speech on the topic, rebuilding our military readiness, and that was not discussed at all. Those things were missed by you as well. Any other topics you wish were explored that were not?
Yeah, so, I'm not interested in Donald Trump's tax returns or what he said on the Howard Stern show over a decade ago. This candidate came from nowhere. Why? Because of his message on the wall. The idea that the moderator didn't talk about immigration, didn't talk about the wall, that's unconscionable. This is why Donald Trump is the Republican candidate. So, yes, I would have liked to have heard of that. And also, you're absolutely right. The speech he gave before the Commander-in-Chief event that was held 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, the day before or the day of, he gave a very impressive national security speech in Philadelphia. If your listeners want to know what Donald has actually proposed in terms of national security, check out that speech from Philadelphia.
All right. He is Dr. Sebastian Gorka. He is the author of the best-selling book, New York Times bestseller, no less, Defeating Jihad, A Winnable War. And Dr. Gorka is going to be in Chicago in the not-too-distant future.
Yes, our keynote breakfast speaker at Freedom Summit 2016, Freedom Summit Chicago. Go to freedomsummitchicago.com to get your tickets and join us on October 29th.
Dr. Gorka, thanks so much for joining us again. Appreciate it.
My pleasure, and please do check out my website, gorkabriefing.com.
GorkaBriefing.com. We got it. Thanks, Dr. Gorka. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.